Welcome back to Highlander Heart, and this episode we are without one of our members. Joe unfortunately can't be here this week, but hopefully he'll be back next time. We are, as you can see behind Rob, it's a bit of a clue what we're talking about here. and mainly, yeah, there you go. We're doing Highlander 3 because we have to, because last time we did Highlander 2, and I think both of our geek OCD kicked in, and we there was no way that we can do a Highlander 3 next.
Yeah, I'm OCD, so
had to be Highlander 3. So we have got a great guest coming up later, and really looking forward to speaking to Andy Morahan, director of Highlander 3. Been meaning to speak to that guy for so long, and really pleased that finally we can do that today.
yeah, I'm finally looking forward to meeting or speaking to him as well, because Grant's got all the goodies over the years. So, I finally get to join in.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. So before we get into Highlander 3, though, a little bit of housekeeping first. Let's talk about one thing that every now and then we get comments on the Highlander page. Every now and then people, but on the Highlander 2, there were probably more comments than there were viewers.
Yes.
But one of them pointed out something relatively interesting that I hadn't noticed myself. Apparently, I keep touching my chin. And this is Teresa, who is one of the I don't know how, one of the originals that where we all met that in Denver with Joe and Rob.
Oh yeah.
Teresa and yeah. So
Teresa's very critical of us. I mean?
She is. Yeah, thanks, T. Appreciate it. So she wanted it. She was like, "Oh, that should be a drinking game. How many times does Grant touch his chin?"
Well, I mean, if we could turn it into a drinking game, but we'd need paramedics on standby, I think.
I think so. Let's see how many times I touched my chin in the last episode.
Yeah, just add a counter. Click, click, click.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think that there is. Yeah, you would be drunk by now, T, if you did.
Oh, I don't know. Like
so
that. She might be wee, but she can put away a few.
To be fair, you're right. Yeah, she held her own in a way, didn't she?
Yeah, that woman is well acquainted with the wee dram. Not in a negative way, in a purely positive enjoyment of the water of life, shall we say?
Absolutely, she's a connoisseur.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just a drunk.
And one other thing I should mention before we get into it is that both Rob and I, although separately, have been to Scotland since we last saw you.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic. How did you go on, Rob?
Oh, it was brilliant. I mean, we went up to Fort William and used that as a base camp. And we tried to do a couple of Highlander locations, but it wasn't really it wasn't for that. Yeah. It was just a holiday, relax, chill. Unusually get a bit of sun in Scotland for some reason.
Yeah.
But I got to throw in a few. We went to Glenfinnan. Tried to find the beach from Highlander 1 and almost succeeded. That's a good story. and we got to go to the Glen Nevis, where we got the hill that Christoph stood on in Highlander 3 for many scenes.
Yeah.
Which was a particular, like, I was properly beaming.
Yeah, no, it was a great photo.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be fair, I was reading instructions on how to get to this place because I'd never been, and it says drive forth here, cattle great, do this, do that. I was like, okay, okay. Now it says there's a couple of distinctive mounds, insert innuendo here, and we saw a couple of hills. I was like, that doesn't look high enough. Keep going, keep going. So we drove all the way through Glen Nevis up to where the hikers go into the mountains.
Oh my God.
Like, we must have been the 2 hills back there. Tracy's like, yes, I did tell you that way back when. So shout out to Tracy. She was right. I was wrong.
Right. Of course, because
yeah.
Women always
but no, it was a purely like proper moment. Like standing on that hill, you're like, in my head, I'm hearing Bonnie Portmore.
Well, yeah, the next time I go.
And sadly, there was some people around that area, so I couldn't wield.
Yeah.
So I've got a photo of me holding my hand out with nothing in it. So I was like, yeah, just imagine there's a sword like.
We'll have it in post.
That's yeah, Photoshop, done deal. Yeah.
No, I mean, it genuinely was phenomenal. We had such good weather. I mean, I know there was sweltering down here in England, but up there in Scotland was perfect. It was like
that's to quote a character from Trainspotting, it's unnatural.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we got a tan.
It's not like, how far south did we go? Like, it wasn't real, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, no, it was. We saw some amazing sort of views and things there. We went to the Isle of Skye, which was fantastic. Just such a gorgeous place, and apparently somewhere where they say that it's God showing off, which is why it's so beautiful there. But yeah, just amazing. We drove all the way up to Dunvegan Castle, although I mean, it's a little expensive to go in, and we'd just done Ellandonnan the day before, so we're like, we won't go in, but we could see it. We thought we'd be able to see it from the road, and then we had to drive around a little bit further around. We found this lovely little spot, and we sort of walked down onto the sort of near the lock and sat, and we had food there and stuff, and you could see it just across the way. I think I did the little live video on Facebook, and was just sitting there eating, and this guy pulls up in a van and just gets his kind of little kind of boat thing out of his van and just goes down to the, chucks it in the lock, jumps in. Whoop, he was away across the lock. Just amazing, just amazing kind of to be able to just like wander around and do that.
I mean, I've never been to Skye. I mean, here some history of me being Scottish. Grant has seen more Highlander locations before I did. I've been Scotland all my life until recently.
Yeah.
And barely seen a thing. Grant, however, has enjoyed my country more than me.
Sorry about that. Well, yeah, and I got married there as well, so you know.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Just to add insult to injury, but yeah. So we saw. Yeah, we got to Ellandonnan. That was probably the only real sort of Highlander location that we kind of we got to. But it was great being there again. It was only the third time I've been, and this is the first time my little one had been. So we were all sitting there in front by the castle, having a little picnic on the benches and stuff. And of course, the only film that I have on my phone is Highlander. So I got it to the right scene, and I went over and I showed him the little scene, and I went, "Look, that's that." He's like, "Oh, cool," yeah, and that was that. He was interested for about 10 seconds, but yeah, it was a fantastic time. Apart from the midges, well documented in my terrible live videos where I basically was just physically attacked. And the one where we did Ellandonnan in the sunset, after I quit the live, they were above my head. I looked like Pigpen from Peanuts, and I ran to the car, and I looked up, and they were still there, like as if I'd created some kind of thing that that they could be inside. Like, how could I not outrun them? They got their little tiny wings. They can't flap that fast. Surely.
Tiny wings? Are you kidding? They're Scottish midges. They're hard. They're proper hard midges.
Oh, they're evil though. But thankfully, I stopped ditching a couple of days ago. Finally, so yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah. I'm quite immune to them by now.
So let's get into Highlander 3 then. So I think we need to start at the beginning.
Yes.
We have both read the Brad Merman first draft of Highlander 3, which is kind of interesting.
Well, I'm kind of interested to hear what you say, because from my perspective, I thought it was a lot better than the film.
Yes,
And there were
definitely some better things. So, do you want to kind of walk people through roughly kind of how the story goes within the first draft?
Well, the first draft, basically, I mean, as we're all well aware, the first when we watched the film, there's the Nakano in Japan and all that kind of stuff, which is not there now. It basically, according to the draft I read, it's the Scottish Lowlands it started off in.
Yeah.
And you're following a random story about a young immortal and a teacher. None of these guys have got names, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's no Nakano, there's no Connor. It's just unknown immortals, blah blah blah. Basically, an evil immortal is looking for someone for the power of transition, the power to transform himself, and I think that's in Scotland as well. And he's human. He's not an immortal in the draft for I remember. And we're talking. He gets this, promises him a deal, breaks the deal, kind of thing. Yeah. He gets to learn a chant that turns him into whatever. And he goes after, for some reason, he goes after the old man. He kills the young boy, goes after the old man, looking for the Highlander. It's like, why? He's still young immortal at this point. Why? Basically, then you kind of know what happens. There's a cave in. They get stuck when he kills the old man, the quickening and whatnot. That's kind of kept. But yeah, I mean, the story's better than what we got from, it takes a lot of the same beats, and you kind of know how the film arrived from the script.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, you see some better characterization and better moments story-wise.
Yeah.
When Connor bumps into an immortal who takes him to a bunch of other immortals.
Yeah, I love that.
They're discussing the game, and they're discussing why it's so important to win, and rather than to just walk alone kind of thing. And I kind of enjoyed that aspect to it, because it's set up. And the Highlander 3 we got, the flashbacks with Pierre, I think that became the new guy, Kavanagh, in the script.
Yes.
The old guy.
Yeah.
Kavanagh took him to these immortals, and they're discussing why it's important to win, to be the good guys and go out and stop the bad guys. And that character persists through the film as opposed to Pierre, who turned up a couple of times as an annoyance and then lost his head.
Yeah.
There was a sacrifice there. You didn't see any relationship really.
So there was no weight to that.
Yeah, there was nothing. I mean, the Kavanagh character, as I was reading the script, this Kavanagh guy reminded me of Highlander series. And Duncan is befriended by an immortal, saves him from getting his head chopped off, and they get drinking and they party and all this kind of stuff. And then after it, he takes his head. He tries to take his head. But as I was reading it, that's all I could see in my head. I was picturing this guy, big sort of scary guy. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the script. I mean, the spelling, and it was atrocious, and the
I mean, yeah, but I mean, it was. Who knows how first draft it was? It could have been a very, very.
yeah, it could have been a third first draft. Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the massive inconsistencies in McLeod and McLeod. Although, having said that, watching the movie again, and I'd not seen a movie for a while until I watched it again the other night, Highlander 3. When the fax comes through, it's misspelled. Like,
yeah,
why is it
yeah.
spelled McCloud?
Well, that was in the script.
But yeah, maybe so. They've
Yeah,
gone from the script and gone.
look at the script and say, yeah, take the yeah. There is that element of what the hell, but then the most egregious spell. Sorry, we're going on a wee tangent here. The most egregious spelling that really stuck out to me is when Ramirez was mentioned, and the guy mentioned was Raw Mires, R-O-M.
It's literally like you heard it once.
Yeah,
Like when you watch the movie once, heard it and they'll just sort of mistyped it.
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of that as a Highlander fan looking back on it, irritating. But throughout I could see what they were trying to do. They were establishing relationships in the film or the script that would follow on from the first movie, as opposed to being just a straight carbon copy.
Yeah. Well, one of the things one of my favorite things in it is the fact that Bedso is back.
Yes.
As
Exactly.
the kind of main cop.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, when Bedsole came in, I was like, a big grin appeared in my face because when you saw when we saw the film, you had this unnamed cop that was. I remember when this happened the first time. He was like, "Who are you?" You know what I mean?
And it's weird as well because he looks a bit like Garfield, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if they'd have said that it was Garfield, it would have been,
I would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
Well, this was a no name. I remember. You forget. I remember. Like, who are you? And how do you remember? But when you're reading the script, when Bedsole come up and this is happening again, and he like gnashes back and he's putting all the pieces together. I mean, sometimes they're the wrong pieces, but they're still the pieces. And he knows what he's doing, and he goes back and he's like, "I'm tracking this guy. Let me do this," and blah blah blah. But there was also, remember, we talked about the deleted scenes, and there was the Castigear and Bedsole were there with him. They were getting him drunk. It felt like there was a follow-on because there was a line in the script. I'll be at a bar. See you there.
Yeah.
Nod back to a deleted scene, which I really loved.
Yeah.
Like, it's happening again. They'll have to follow him. He knows that.
Yeah.
So that when Bedsole turned up, it was like, yes, big smile. This is a continuation, not a copy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that if Highlander 3 is guilty of anything, it is the fact that it is far too often a copy.
Yeah.
Original. Albeit more kind of rock and roll and more, even more kind of visually stylized and and all of that, has been the case, with a music video director like Andy on board. But yeah, narratively, when it copies, are the points at which I kind of go.
Yeah, but I mean, there's copying and there's copying. I mean, there's scenes directly. He kidnaps a person McLeod loves, takes him for a wild joyride, leaves him in a message on his answer phone and where to find him so he can fight him.
Yeah.
That's verbatim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, and it was, as much as, I love Highlander 3 for one reason. It has the distinction of being the one and only Highlander movie I got to see in the cinema.
Right.
Twice. Because the fourth one in the source never got anywhere near a cinema in the UK.
No.
So this was the one time I got to experience it on the big screen. And I was so looking forward to it. And a wee bit of flashback here. When it was coming out, I was getting excited. I was getting jazzed. The series was on. I was Highlander. It was this. I get to see it. And I'm like, right, I'm going out. I'm talking to my parents. I'm going out. I'm going to see a film. Like, take your brother with you. Oh, Yeah, I have to. So I never really got to see the movie because he was like, so what, how, why? But in the first one, yeah, yeah, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Yeah, so yeah, that's why I had to see it twice. Um, but yeah, I genuinely enjoyed the script. I mean, there was problems with it, obviously. First
Yeah,
draft.
no, there were. I mean, there were some things that I had issues as well. I just purely the one more thing that I liked, other than what we've already said, and I like that I like the Scottish stuff at the beginning, that it was Scotland,
Yeah, 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 that was
I
great.
can understand why maybe they chose Japan. Was that the girls within the story that both of which are played in Highlander 3 by Deborah Unger
Yeah,
in the original draft, they have a connection,
but they weren't the same. They
but they're
weren't
not the same
identical.
person. Yeah, and certainly no intention seems to be made.
Yeah.
Within the movie, he hears her voice on the TV,
Mm.
and is all of a sudden like, oh my god, that's this person I haven't seen for several hundred years. Whereas in the script, it's the ring, which is still
Yeah,
in the movie, but it's the ring that is the connection, and then it's
yeah,
kind of a then it's formed from there.
yeah. I
Because
like that.
yeah, because in Highlander 3, when you're watching that, and it's just like, well, okay, so what is this? Is this reincarnation?
Yeah.
I was watching Highlander 3 with Noah, my middle son, and he was just like, so is she immortal then? Like, no, she's not immortal. All right. So what is? I don't know.
But they did that in the series. I think they were trying to copy that episode, The Samurai,
Right. Yeah.
where they had that the actress played the flashback and the future without being immortal.
Mm,
But very confusing because as the viewer, you're like, we see people walking through time looking exactly as they are, and you
yeah.
see an actress playing the two parts,
Yeah.
but she's not.
Mm.
That kind of takes you straight out,
Yeah. No, it
in
does a
my
bit.
opinion. But you're right. The bit with the ring and the script, well, it felt natural. He sees the ring on her hand. It's like, where'd you get that? Oh, it's
Mm,
been in my family for generations and whatnot. And it takes him back
yeah.
when he met a woman who he likes, and this where it comes back to Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh's with him in those scenes in France, and they're like, we can't get involved again. You know that. You told me about Heather.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this again? But he's trying, and it's like you forget the pain of losing the love,
Yeah.
and you try and have it again, all that kind of stuff. And it did take, it did. I thought it was a very natural progression. It's
It
a
was.
lesson learned over the years not to fall in love again.
Yeah. And the other thing I think it did really nicely as well is that there was a very natural progression from the Connor we knew from the first movie into his sort of new life. So kind of moving on, moving across the ocean, going to France. You kind of saw that happen. You saw him wanting to move on. You saw these things happen rather than him just sort of just appearing in Japan and not knowing what's going on. There was definitely more thought put into the character, like him as a character, and what was kind of happening. I think Kavanaugh was a good character in as much as he facilitated those moments, and he allowed. It was helpful for all of those things to happen. He was a kind of sounding board for McLeod. Wouldn't have worked if he was just on his own, kind of going
Yeah.
through the journey. But there is obviously that element where he does feel a little bit like another Ramirez,
Oh, yeah.
uh,
But I mean, they started off Kavanaugh's storyline as a character who goes and finds immortals, brings them to the end of the fold, and explains why this is important,
mm,
and tries to entrust the future
yeah.
of everything into them. But then that's forgotten about, and then he becomes a sidekick.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I absolutely loved the fact that they got together at the church and
Yeah,
sort of sit down thing with immortals, because that never been. It's actually still never been done. And it would have been a really nice hook and something unique to have
yeah,
introduced into that, and would have just given more depth to the film in general. One aspect of it I didn't like was a little bit too midichlorian for me, was the fact that later in the script there is another attempt to explain immortality. But what is it? She calls them the Callans.
Yeah, the mythology. I mean, I was thinking about this as I was reading it, and I was thinking, I was like, mythology throughout history, we learn of tales of yore and all these mythological creatures. They could have been misinterpreted as fairies, as all these sort of things over the years. People could find out. I mean, people will notice fun of seeing people getting struck by lightning and just think it odd.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mind the explanation. What I did mind was the spirits idea, the idea they're spirits sent to Earth, which is a wee bit too much a reference to Highlander 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was, I didn't mind, I guess I didn't mind the fact that it was steeped in mythology and things like that. Yeah, it was just that it was specific in that respect, that it was spirits that were returning to the bodies and things like that. And generally, I felt that the script was a little bit saggy in places. It definitely needed tightening. And then I guess effectively that's kind of what started. Earlier today, I did speak to a chap called Renee Manzer, who was brought on as a script doctor.
Okay.
To the original script, and although he admits it's a little while ago that he did it, so he can't necessarily remember details, which is fair enough because it was quite a while ago. He did say this, so I'll read this out. He said, Bill Panzer, the producer, hired me as a script doctor to work on the screenplay before the director was hired. I tried my best to bring back the spirit of the first Highlander. A few ideas were kept and helped the film to be greenlit, but the whole concept of a sequel to the first film meant dealing with a contradiction with Highlander's finale, which had made it clear that only MacLeod and Kurgan remained. The first film was actually self-sufficient, and to paraphrase the Immortals, there really should have been only one. So, I think there was still that struggle even then, clearly with, even with people being brought on to write on it, that how do you make this a successful kind of continuation when it finished? But I actually think one aspect of it I had always thought in my mind would be a better way to have elaborated, because it's a bit woolly. The fact that they've been in this cavern for 400 years, so they look identical. As Noah pointed out when he was watching it, hair grows. With the head haircuts, is there sort of like
a barber, underground barber?
Yeah, clearly. And so, to my mind, it would have made way more sense if they had pushed the idea that the cave-in caused all of the basically a locked pocket of oxygen, so that when that was gone, effectively they were dead, and they can't come back to life because there's no oxygen. So even even they can't. I mean, forgiving the fact that Connor gets to around the bottom of a lock and I'm alive and do all of that. Beyond that, the idea is being that potentially they're dead, and therefore the gathering imagines that they are no longer with us, and then when they're excavating, air rushes in, and then then they're alive again. So that would make more sense to me.
Oh yeah, that's I like that.
Yeah, rather than them just kind of like kicking it for 400 years, they literally would have gone insane. And there appears to be no difference in their character from I mean, they're mental in the first place, but like from that point to the point where they
yeah. I mean, let's be clear. The movie itself has some fundamental flaws that are glaringly obvious. But the script, to try and fix that script, it's like you kind of have to forget about the ending, which most people try to.
Sure.
Continue on anyway. But as the script itself, it felt more like a Highlander movie. And it took, like, there was some character progression from the first film to the second film. I like that carrying on.
Yeah.
I did like the idea of Bedsole being back and replacing him with an unnamed cop. I mean, if you took the cop stuff out of it, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you're going to have the cop stuff in it, have it be Bedsole, have it be someone following on
Yeah. Yeah. No.
again.
Yeah. And that would
No,
have made sense.
yeah,
So I mean, going into the actual the movie as it was made and as it sort of turned out, I think I've mentioned already that I think that sometimes it possibly is too similar
yeah.
to the original movie, and like you say, some of it is literally beat for beat, um, like it. The one thing I have always loathed. Do you know what? Do you know what it is?
Oh, hang on. Handle three, handle three, handle three. No, go on.
John.
Yeah.
I can't stand his little face. And apologies to the actor, nothing to do with the acting. Just as a character, pointless. Beyond, but yeah, there's not. It's basically is a replacement for. It's like somebody went, well, look, I don't really want the girl getting kidnapped again because that's too similar to the original, even though all the other stuff is. So why doesn't he have a son? And the son could get kidnapped at the end.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of shoehorned in.
Yeah, I don't understand it. And I asked Renee, this is one of the things I asked him specifically about, and he couldn't recall at what point John came into the story because he wasn't
in the original script.
Brent. Yeah, exactly. He's not in Brad Merman's script. So I really wanted to find out at what point he came in. What was the reasoning for bringing in an adopted son?
Yeah.
Because I just don't get it.
Well, I mean, when at the end of the first film, it was made clear that he can love and grow old and live and have children.
Yeah.
That was part of the deal.
Yeah, sure.
So the idea of him adopting a son because you want to bring these other immortals in, and you have to have them still not be able to have children. Doesn't make much sense. I mean, they would have noticed that after a while.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I think if you excise that for the film, it would be fine.
Yeah.
And it would negate the need for a kidnapping.
Yes. No, absolutely.
One problematic scene that everybody's got with the movie and take it out.
Yeah. But yeah, I think absolutely we could have lost John and that wouldn't have been a problem. So yeah, I think there are definitely issues with Highlander 3, but there's a lot of good stuff too. I was actually quite, I mean, God, we spoke about this the other day. I had to sit through it in 4:3 format because the only DVDs that we have of Highlander 3 and Highlander 2 in the UK are still
4:3.
4:3. We don't even have widescreen. I mean, like what?
Yeah, I mean that is one of the most criminal things about not being in an American market is that we don't get access to them, to most of the stuff. It's not a large market by any stretch of imagination, but Europe gets a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
I mean, this one here, that's Australian.
Right.
That's German. So there are markets that we just don't get. Highlander 3 and 2 and 3 and the home video market beyond those two, entertainment and video prints, which are 4:3 horribly.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are, and it was tough to sit through, but I did genuinely enjoy a lot of it. It was there are still aspects of it which I really like. I like the fact that he goes back to Russell Nash Antiques, although it's a shame that Rachel's not there. I like
the original script.
Well, yes, she is, exactly, and he goes back, and it's absolutely. It feels more of a continuation, more, because of that, just for her involvement, and because it's referenced. but you know, you get things like, I mean, who's to say whether he's been back in all that time before? But the mere fact that within the movie, Connor goes back to his thing, starts taking off the dust sheets off the thing,
Yeah.
you know, turns his massive TV on,
There
then
wasn't.
goes to but then goes to the fridge and gets something out of the fridge.
Yeah, because everything in that fridge is good and not. But he's immortal. I suppose he can eat it and not die.
But those leaps in logic.
Yeah, I see what you're doing, yeah.
It's just there's an aspect of it where, and I think this comes really from, you know, probably more from the script and the limitations within shooting and timing and things like that, and people just not picking up on stuff like this that just leaps in logic. Like, how the hell does the I don't know what to call him, you know, like the horseman guy.
Well, in the script, they're called the Horsemen. But yeah, how did they get to another side of the world?
Yes, with his sword, completely clad in all the stuff he's wearing. I mean, at least in the original script, that fight happens at the docks. So the inference is that he has come on a boat from wherever he was to New York, and then, you know, and then meets Connor there. So at least they're thinking about the logic of it.
Well, they're thinking about the logic in all the wrong ways. I mean, as an immortal who survived many centuries, who could have, because we don't know the background of these guys, they could have been alive for many centuries. They've survived, they know how to survive, yet they can't change their clothing, hide a sword, and manage to get real-time currency in a new world. Because I'm pretty sure paying with Japanese yen or whatever the currency was back in Japan, you get to book passage to the Americas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but at least the American DVD tried to explain that by doing the fancy effects.
Yes, exactly. So at least there was an aspect of it that kind of worked in that respect. Yeah. No, absolutely.
No, you have to leap off a tall building with your disbelief with that one, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I think there's definitely some good stuff and some bad stuff in the movie. And I think it's about time we brought on our guest, and maybe he can enlighten us further.
Oh yeah.
All right. So without further ado, Andy Morahan, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I've been wanting to speak to you for years and years, and sort of every now and then prodding you, and then just never actually managing to get around to sorting something out. So I really appreciate you coming on.
It's all right, go on. That's fine. Absolutely fine.
So obviously we're here to talk about Highlander 3. I'm really interested to know when you were first aware of Highlander in general, not even necessarily professionally. But when you first came across it, whether you were sort of, what your thoughts were on it, whether you were a fan and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I first came across it. It was quite in the kind of music, it was the music video community, especially in London, because Russell Mackay had done the first one and it had been, you know, quite a hit, and it was kind of, everyone thought it was a great concept, and, you know, it seemed natural for someone who had the kind of expansive cinematic viewpoint that Russell had, to do something, you know, he'd bring something like that to the party in a movie, and it was kind of notorious in the UK, especially in the music video business, and so I was a fan. I wasn't particularly a fan of the second movie, but
who was?
So obviously you were kind of I guess you were the second wave of big sort of music directors that sort of came around at the time of music videos. Did you ever meet Russell around that sort of time? Were you sort of friends, or did you sort of cross paths? Or
cross paths is probably more the way of saying it. I mean, he was with a particular company called MGMM, Mulaney Grant, Mulcahy, Mallet, and I don't know if it's in that order, but they were quite a big music video company, and I was in a kind of smaller company coming up called Vivid, which had various people like Vaughan and Anthea, Big TV, and those kind of directors. So we were definitely second, third wave of music video directors at the time. So they were kind of the big boys, you know. They were doing Duran Duran and Ultravox and all that kind of stuff, and we were coming up, you know, quickly on the inside, as they say. And we would, you know, in various edit suites in London and stuff like that, or social events, you might run into one or two of them, but we were upstarts, I think, compared to them. But yeah, we were secret fans, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. So I mean, it made total sense, I suppose, for the producers to think of you when it came to sort of finding somebody to kind of follow in his footsteps.
Well, I guess by that time you'd had the second one, which hadn't fared so well and was a bit of a strange film, and a bit futuristic, which I think kind of got away from the, you know, what I think people loved about the first one was the kind of the historical, you know, Scottish thing was such, you know, whether it jumped generations and centuries and stuff, there was still that kind of connection to what the core idea was, which was, you know, MacLeod was a Highlander from Scotland, and I think so. By the time it came to the third one, I started doing some humongously big videos for Guns N' Roses. And so I think someone kind of connected the dots of, yeah, this guy could be quite good for carry on the tradition of kind of big cinematic approach to it. So yeah, it was nice they thought of me, I must say.
Oh, absolutely. And how involved were you from the beginning? I know there was an early draft of the script, Brad Merman, that was then kind of tweaked, and then there were more sort of revisions and things. And were you involved in kind of the script tweaking process at all? Do you remember? Or?
Yeah, it was an ongoing tweaking process as far as I can remember.
As is always the way. Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, Brad Merman is the originator, really, of the whole thing, you know, in terms of concept. And I don't think there was anything too wrong with his draft of Highlander 3. He was definitely trying to get it back on track. But then various producers got involved, and, you know, Panzer Davis, who kind of owned the whole franchise, got more involved in the script, which I'm not sure took it to a better place. But, you know, people were starting to vie in certain things. And then, of course, Christopher Lambert got involved because he wanted more dialogue. And I used to have great conversations with saying, Christopher, you know, you're much better when you're saying nothing. You know? your look and your presence is what gives it the strength, and which is, I actually believe, you know, not that he couldn't talk and couldn't act. He was a great actor, but he would just, there was something about his presence and the way when he didn't communicate, I felt was stronger than overacting. But he became a bit competitive in terms of how many lines, you know, he's one of those people at the time, and he'd probably laugh at it now, bless him, but he would kind of almost count the amount of words he had in a script and kind of relate it to how important he was in the script. But of course, he was the most important thing in the script. He was the Highlander, so
absolutely,
I'm not sure what the problem was. But yes, it was an ongoing tweak and battle all the time between various drafts. And you know, in those days, you know, every time there was a new draft, it was like the pink draft or the green draft, or, you know, because the various new pages were in different colours. And yeah, I'll tell you, man, it was a rainbow draft by the time we finished. Even on the days of shooting, I mean, sometimes it was, you know, sometimes you'd block something out, the scene was too long, you'd have to, you know, get on the phone to writers. This is why I get much more involved in writing or co-writing versions of scripts now, because the amount of time when you have to call a writer remotely and say, this isn't quite working, or it's too long, and and you're on set, and you know you've got people screaming at you saying, "You've got to shoot, you've got to shoot, you've got to shoot," and but it was kind of part of the fun of it, you know, because we were trying to find the sweet spot again for the franchise, basically.
Yeah, sure. No, I can't imagine. It must be really frustrating. Kind of very interested to know about sort of casting and that kind of thing. Whether there were other people that you had in mind for the role of Kane, for instance. I remember, but I don't know if I just made this up. You know how the memories kind of like, you know, they kind of trick you after, you know, a number of years. But I'm sure I remember there being a rumor of Axl Rose being considered for the role of Kane. But is that just wish fulfillment on my part?
Yes and no. There is a connection.
Yes, of course.
In the sense that, you know, Axl had been a huge fan of the first film, and the fact that Queen who he was a huge fan of, had done the music or the title track or whatever. And because I just worked with them, did a couple of videos with them, and I wanted him to write, or the band to write the title song for Highlander 3, which for a little while he was very interested in. And then he got very uninterested in it when they decided they wanted Mario Van Peebles.
Oh.
And that's all I'm prepared to say on it, but he wasn't too happy. And I said, well, why don't you play it yourself? And then the phone went dead. I don't think he was particularly into the thought of acting, but I think he'd seen a couple of Mario's films and he wasn't much of a fan. And, you know, I don't know. It's just one of those things in the past that kind of gets mixed up into different little anecdotes and stories and stuff like that. But there was a conversation, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
And that's all I'm prepared to say.
No, that's fine. Look, that's more than I expected. So that's cool.
Good.
I think I remember. I think it's when you spoke to the rewatched Highlander rewatch guys that you mentioned that the producers had kind of as much as told you to effectively remake the original. Well, I think that was the way that you put it, and that certainly comes across within the movie. And there's a very definite feel of having Highlander 2 having gone so far in one direction that there was, you know, an obvious kind of attempt to bring it way back. Did you feel at any point that maybe it was getting too close to the original? There were certain, you know, scenes and the way that scenes were kind of led from one to another, that you've got an answer phone message, which then leads to a car chase with somebody being kidnapped, leading to the sort of the finale and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. There was a little bit of box ticking. But I was more worried. I was more not worried. I was more concerned about bringing the atmosphere back, if you see what I mean. You know, you know, for me, you know, to take the kind of quickenings to a different level. To at the time, I mean, they look, you know, a little dated now, but at the time the effects were pretty good on the quickenings and stuff we did and all that stuff. So I was more worried about, you know, really re-energizing the franchise with that kind of, you know, atmospheric, the music, the kind of montage, all that kind of stuff, you know, that him going back to Scotland to train and all that kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff is what I was trying to bring back to the party, as it were. I mean, the problem, I think that for me, what it attempts to be more like one, you know, a couple of things I don't think worked in our favour. I think, you know, even though we shot a lot of it in Canada, and that helped in terms of scale and stuff like that, apart from the main three actors, we were shooting in Montreal, and then we had to cast a lot of people like the cop and that locally, who really were more French speaking than North American speaking, and it just that if I had my time again, I would have widened the net in terms of casting, because I think that's a bit weak in the film, and like the cop and all that kind of stuff. I think Mario did a really good job. There was a kind of competitive energy between him and Christopher, which actually I think helped the movie.
Yeah.
I think she's fine. I think she's a good actress. I just wished we'd got better with some of the what I call the smaller parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the scale and that, and the use of the music and Lorena McKennitt and some, I think there's some great sequences in the film. I still do.
No, absolutely, me too. And I actually love some of the music. Rob and Joe were talking about this the other night, and Joe and I both love "God Took a Picture of Me" by what's the name of the artist again, Rob? Do you remember?
That's the one I'm pretty sure wasn't on the soundtrack and the listings and the credits.
Yeah.
Remember it?
It's I can't. Do you know what? I follow her on Instagram. I can't remember the name of the artist, but it's such a great song, and it's effectively written for the it's God took a picture of me looking up with the light coming down in his face.
Yeah.
This movie, yeah. Love that track. And I love the kind of rock and rollness of the fight sequence at the end, where it's all just like heavy rock and roll and clashing swords and things.
That was a hell of a sequence to shoot, because as I say in a kind of diplomatic way, the competitiveness between Christoph and Mario kind of came to a head during that sequence, and there were a few naughty wrestling moves in there and head bashing that I think they were trying to get one over each other. But as I said, the energy of that kind of competitiveness kind of worked for us, because there were occasions where there was no love lost between them. But hey, you're a director. Sometimes you go with that because it works for you.
No, absolutely, far better than having two people disinterested with each other that are just no, that's super. We mentioned Scotland there. Rob and I both come back from separately. Both come back from Scotland recently. Managed to avoid the heat wave down here in England and had beautiful weather up there. But Rob, you managed to get more Highlander locations than I did.
Oh yeah, well we went to Glenfinnan again. I've been there many times, but the one thing we got to do that I've been looking for some time was the Glen Nevis location where Chris walks up the hill. He does training with a sword, and he's supposedly buried Heather there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's all 3 different locations for different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something I've never seen before. And I climbed up on and I'm looking around at this amazing view of Glen Nevis, and it was never captured on film the way when you see it. I don't think the lens can take it all in, but it was stunning and beautiful. And I was just wondering why wasn't more of Scotland shot, if you know what I mean, rather than just a montage?
Because, by that stage of the film, it's a very complicated political situation where there's about 6 or 7 producers pulling in different ways. And basically, I got 3 days filming in Scotland. And I had to do the whole forge sequence and making the sword, and in narratively, you get the idea that he's gone back to his roots to regain his strength and make the sword and all that, and so the story isn't really about Scotland as such, other than it's about his heritage and where he gets his strength from, and that's all I had time to shoot. I mean, in those days we didn't have drones, if you can imagine, so we had to get helicopters up in gale force weather and hailstones rattling on the you know, pretty scary stuff. You know, at one point, I think we were going to shoot one afternoon, and the helicopter guys goes, "No, we're on. We got to go on rescue duty, if you know what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
God, yeah.
you take. No, I don't think it was a problem, but they had to be on standby, and so we couldn't film for one afternoon out of the 3 days. So, you know, cuts your options right down, really.
Well, if it was, I mean, 3 days is not a lot of time, and trust me, when you're in the Highlands trying to find locations, that 3 days just takes up just the traveling alone would take up a lot.
Yeah.
Well, what we did was we knew we were going. You know, we wanted to go to Fort William, and you know, and literally, you know, went through Glencoe and you know, looked all around there, Ben Nevis, Glen Nevis, you know, all around there, and we got in a helicopter and scouted some castles and stuff pretty, you know, within 20-30 miles range, and got pretty much everything we needed to get or was going to be useful to us in that time.
Yeah, that's good. No,
Yeah.
Yeah, the locations, always going back to Scotland is a thing for me, obviously, because, you know, the funny accent and whatnot. But
Now listen, my grandfather's Scottish, and my middle, I'm called Andrew Douglas for good reason. So I'm half Scottish, half Irish, half English, or quarter, or third, whatever you want to call it.
That's
But
good.
yeah, it's a big part of my roots as well. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. My maiden name is Murray. My mother's maiden name was Murray. So,
Oh, they're associated with my lot. The Murrays were set to the Clan McGregor back in the day.
That's right, they were. Yeah.
There you go. Distant cousins.
Oh yeah.
Celtic, it's all there somewhere.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, trace most of the ancestry back to Scotland, England, and Ireland, and out to the Scandinavia and whatnot. So yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, absolutely. So what have you kind of felt about the franchise as it's rolled on from Highlander 3? Have you kind of observed it with interest, or have you sort of,
I kind of got pissed off with the producers and the way it all went down in the end. I mean, you know, for instance, Dimension had it for the US, and, you know, Bob Bob Weinstein, who ran that, thank God it wasn't Harvey, but Bob Weinstein, who ran that, said, yeah, I think it's great, but I want more effects in it. And, you know, I'm going to put another, I don't know, $250,000 into the effects. And I had to tell him, don't give it to the producers. Take delivery of the negative, and I'll come to the US and we'll put the effects in with you, if you know what I mean. We'll do that. And that's exactly what we did. It became one of those things where I didn't want to go near a movie for years after that. But not because of the film or Christoph or the franchise particularly. It was a really, really tough experience for me because, as I say, all the producers are pulling in different directions. The Bond company got involved, and I had to deliver. Hang on, I had to deliver. Sorry, my back.
Yeah.
That was on the phone call. I had to deliver stuff. You know, I thought I was going to be in Montreal for 3 months and do posts in the UK. Yeah, I ended up having to go back to Montreal, doing everything there. At the time, I had a young family, so I felt really beat up about the whole experience. I got to be honest with you. And and I didn't, you know, a couple of things happened to me on that film that, you know, I didn't get Axl to do the track. You know, it was the one film where Sean Connery didn't do, and you know, it was, for me, it was just like could have been so much better. That kind of vibe to it. And then they did the TV series, which I thought was okay. In fact, I think that if someone did a TV series of Highlander now, it'd be fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone should really be reviving it right now, because, you know, with Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that kind of stuff, I think it'd be.
Yeah, we actually agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be huge again. So I kind of, but you know, time is a great healer, as they say, and I look back on it now with quite a bit of affection, and you know, I still speak to Christoph and stuff like that. And you know, as I said, there's things in there I'm really proud of, and I think look great. And you know, and I think it helped restore the franchise a little bit, especially after 2. So yeah, in hindsight, I was really happy to be involved with it, part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And interesting, Joe had asked us to ask a question in his absence. You mentioned the series there. I think again, this was a rumor that that there was an intention to mention or include some aspect of the series within Highlander 3. I don't know whether that was ever the case. Had they even mentioned it by that point when you were working on it?
They were thinking about it. I remember a conversation. They were thinking about it.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, it didn't go any further than that. No.
Not at the time. You know, that kind of came around. You know, you know, the 2 American producers, Panzer Davis, had a pretty tight control on everything, and the other thing I think didn't do them any favors in the end is they kept moving on. You know, when they had quite a good team together, they change it, and then they change it, and I think it's lacked a little bit of clarity and consistency over the years from kind of just their kind of restlessness to, you know, to change everything. Yeah. Whereas I think you could have built on something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do. And I think that's something I think they're hoping to rectify with the reboot, which is still an active thing with Chad Stahelski of John Wick. So I think they're very much looking at it now as a much more sort of open, you know, rather than, you know, make one film that has a pure ending and that's it, and then make a sequel, but then that's got an ending, and then, you know, just you know, just trying to think about it in a much broader sense is definitely the way to go for sure. Absolutely. So before we let you go, I want to say congratulations on Boogeyman. That was fantastic. Well done.
I've won. Well, no, I've won about 7 festivals with it, and it's been in about 43 festivals, I think. And,
yeah.
It's been on Amazon Prime and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of little builder. I'm writing Boogeyman 2 at the moment. It's a kind of guilty pleasure. But weirdly enough, we're casting another film called Severance, which is a really interesting thing, because it's a heist movie set in Antwerp, which the original draft is by Brad Merman.
Oh wow!
But this time, I've got involved in rewriting the actual shooting script, and we're out to people like Stanley Tucci and stuff like that who seem interested. So yeah, so that could be a really nice little project I'm doing next year.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you still doing the Small Faces movie?
I'm trying to do the Small Faces movie, but the producer who's got that is being incredibly slow with it. So it's one of those ones that may take a while, but only because it's not really my core thing. It's one of the things I've helped develop, and then that's up to the producer to do it. But I'm working on 2 movies. One is the Severance one, the Brad Merman original one, which is a bit like a kind of Usual Suspects. It's all set in Antwerp, and then I've rewritten another script for some producers for a Victor Hugo book called Toilers of the Sea, and that's all set off the coast of Guernsey, with shipwreck and a salvage by one man who thinks he's going to win the hand of a fair lady, and that's a really interesting film as well. So we're hoping to do that at the back end of next year as well.
Yeah. So yeah, once everything can get started up again, and
it's the protocol. The shooting protocols are difficult at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant, though. I'm so glad you're so busy. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, you've got to be busy.
Especially now.
Well, you know, actually, weirdly enough, the lockdown has helped me. It'll help me. It'll help a lot of people kind of get their ducks in a row for various projects coming up. So, especially, as I say, I've got involved in rewriting 2 scripts that, not because they needed necessarily rewriting, just because there's been a change of approach because of COVID, but also people want me to bring my vision to the table with it, if you see what I mean. So it's not because there's a problem with the scripts, it's because they want my input into them, and I probably wouldn't have ever had time to do that if it hadn't been for the lockdown. So, so it's been exciting.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I'm so pleased for it. That's excellent.
I'll keep you posted, as they say.
Yeah, no, please do. Absolutely, I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
I was going to say thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a pleasure to speak to you at last. And hopefully, we'll keep in contact and speak again soon. So yeah, if you could take us out, that'd be fantastic.
Hi, this is Andy Morahan on Highlander Heart, reminding you to hold fast and don't lose your head.